Record. What's up, Eric? Welcome in.
Hey, buddy. How are you?
I'm awesome, man. How's your day?
It's the best day ever.
Of course it is, dude.
Every day is.
I know, man. And that's seriously. And I'll tell you this, like from the last time, even listening to it, your energy's great, man. And that's kind of what I want to get into today is like choosing that attitude, man. You know, like we all get so bogged down, but listening to that last time you were on, I was like, damn, man, that's good stuff, man.
Well, I mean, honest to God, I woke up a few years ago and decided that every day was going to be a pretty good day.
Yeah.
And I wake up and just walk around the house in the morning. Today's the best day ever. The best day ever. And then I get in the car and I try to listen to stuff that's uplifting, podcasts, all that jazz. And then, I mean, it just seems to work.
Yeah.
It seems to work. And then I try to be as nice and kind to everybody I touch, meet out there, all that kind of stuff. And that seems to help too. So
well, it carries over, man.
Dude, it literally sets you up for such a better day than walking around going, oh, it's raining outside. Oh, this sucks. And my job's terrible and all that stuff.
What if this happens? And
oh man, I had a talk with I was talking to one of my other friends today, and we were talking about meditation, and I made this analogy. I was talking to some other guys about a week ago, and I gave them this analogy, and like some real light bulbs went on that like the meditation is like being in a batting cage, and the machine is turned up so high that it's shooting fastballs at you like they're a machine gun. And those are your thoughts. Boom, 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 going as fast as they can. And you never get it to slow down enough so you can take a swing and a pitch.
Yeah.
And then when you get mindful, you sit down long enough and you start doing that on a regular basis and just slowing your breath down and realizing that your thoughts are bouncing all over the place. You slow that down enough. When you get to that point that you can slow the pitches down, you get to take a swing at them. And the swing that you get to take is deciding that you're going to choose a different thought that that it's based in reality, that isn't like the chain of catastrophic events that you've done in your head.
Yeah.
Well, this is going to happen, then this is going to happen, then I will be homeless, and then I can't pay my bills, and this, all that stuff. And you're worried about shit that has not even happened.
Absolutely.
It hasn't even happened.
And that's all based on our past thoughts. One thing I even heard this week, listening to Joe Dispenza and Greg Braden, that our physical hearts have brain cells on them. I didn't realize that, like physically. And getting that mind, brain, heart connection and symmetry going, I mean, that's exactly, what you're doing on a daily basis. So getting back to starting over, like, you were born this way? Is that how you were born?
Well, I will say I have a bit of an advantage. I did come out of the womb sprinting.
Did you?
I'm so high, dude. I'm so high strung anyway. I mean, I'm always in motion, and I'm like the Energizer Bunny until it's time for it to go, and then it's like out.
Yeah.
But running, being high strung and running around like this most of the time, it makes it much easier. Now, some people have a hard time with it because if you roll into the dark side of stuff and you're like, it's terrible, it'll go, you'll go falling down the steps with that. But man, I for some reason I've been able to course correct and just make sure that I try to stay on the path of, hey man, this really is the best day ever. And also realizing it's the only one that you have.
Yes.
It really is the only one that you have. I make a joke about this, but this is a true story. I have an ex-girlfriend of mine, and she was out like 5 months ago, and she was out on Sunset Boulevard, had gone to see a band, and had the walking light, walked across the street. Two dudes were street racing. They came down the streets, and one of the guys clipped her with his car and knocked her. Like it didn't, she somehow miraculously, she was banged up and that kind of stuff, but didn't kill her. Hit and run, the guy took off. And so you hear this all the time. You could get hit by a truck tomorrow. My friend got hit by a fucking truck. And it really is. You got to realize that every single day you have is the only one that you have.
Yeah.
If you're ruminating in the past, it's going to suck because you got all these past experiences that bleed into your present. And if you're stuck off in the future, man, the future can be a scary place to be too, sometimes.
And I think a lot of the times, it's our past and our thoughts about it. Maybe we've been in a situation in the past that was negative, and our mind goes, we cling to those thoughts. And, like that, everything's energy. And I truly believe that we attract things to our life. I think our future is completely mindset. And after having you on that last time, it's just like, dude, your energy's fucking awesome. Every time you text me, it's like, have the best day ever. And like, I know you mean that.
That's
dude.
my thing.
I love it, dude.
My thing. I just sent a text to my friend, one of my best friends in Nashville. His son is 11 years old, and has been having like some difficult times, like just growing up and starting to get in his teenage years. And I take that back. He's 12. He's about to be 13. So my friend like sat down with him, told him about the best day ever thing, and like had him listen to Part of the Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle.
Love it.
And some other
Great
stuff.
book.
And so it's so funny because he sent me his son's phone number. And so I hit him up on Monday with like a funny little GIF, and it was like this little baby screaming like this, yeah. and I put best day ever, and then I sent him another one today, and it was like I've been sending the best day ever, and he'll hit me back best day ever.
Yeah.
So it's kind of funny because it's starting to spread around a little bit. I mean, it has a lot of
contagious. It is contagious,
it really
man. It really is. And it's also going to piss a lot of people off. I'm sure there's a lot of people that are annoyed as hell by it, aren't they?
Man, I have a funny story to tell you too.
Please do.
So I had to fly home to Nashville. It's been a couple of weeks ago to take care of my dad, and I was flying on United, and for some reason our flight was running late, and we were flying out of LAX, and so LAX is like the worst airport anyway. So our flight was running late, like we weren't getting on the flight on time. All this stuff, it was running late. People were starting to get antsy, and so when we walked on the plane, I was like one of the last. I'm not one of the last, but like in the third group to board. And I came walking in, and you could tell how frazzled that the flight attendants were. And I was like, "What's up, amazing United flight ladies? How you doing tonight?" and the one girl behind, there was two of them. The girl in the back goes, "That is how I like to be greeted for every flight."
Oh, that's awesome, dude.
And the guy standing in front of me in line goes, "Kiss ass," and then just walked on, and I was like, "Oh man, I'm just telling the truth, man, just telling the truth." And it was so funny because like that guy, I was like, man, I told my friend, I was like, how does that guy in front of me who said that, how does his everyday life go? Because mine doesn't go like that, where I would immediately jump to that. I was just like, hey, it's all good, and you guys are all good. It's not your fault the flight's running late or anything like that. And guess what? I got the best service in economy class that I have ever gotten on an airplane.
I bet you did.
And it was amazing.
You didn't do it for that reason. You didn't do it for that reason.
No, I didn't.
I know you did.
But I was the results were amazing. Because every time they came by, they're like, hey, you need anything? Because we got extra stuff, like extra cookies, extra drinks, all this kind of stuff. And then I went up in the front, and I was going to go to the bathroom, and I sat and had a 15-minute conversation with one of the stewardesses because she was asking me about Nashville. They were going to go stay there, and like, where should we go, and all this other kind of stuff. And I had like this really nice conversation with her. So
you're treating people the way that you're treating people the way that you want to be treated. Goes back to the golden rule.
Isn't that amazing?
It is. It is.
I mean, it really does work. It really does work.
So tell, just since I do want to find out, more, like we went to school together for 12 years, essentially. I was a year ahead of you, but like, how did you get to where you are? Tell us about what you're doing and, how you got to this attitude. I don't remember it being that strong when we were in school together. I mean, we knew each other, but it's not like we were hanging out a lot, but yeah.
So basically what happened to me was I went to college. I went to MTSU straight out of Lipscomb and the high school that we went. Yeah, straight out of high school.
You didn't go to 13th grade.
Yeah, no, I didn't. No, I didn't go to Lipscomb University.
Yeah.
So I went to MTSU and partied like an animal and didn't go to class and had horrible grades and got on academic probation. Stayed there for like a year and a half, and then I decided I was
fun.
Oh, it was great. It's a really, really good time. And you know what's funny is my friend that I was telling you that's still one of my best friends this day was one of the guys that I met there.
Awesome.
I've got like 3 or 4 guys that I'm still really tight with that I met that first year at MTSU.
Yeah.
So then I came back after I realized that I was not going to, because I was on academic probation. I was like, well, I can either go back and waste my dad's money. And at that time, my dad's business had gone sideways, so he couldn't help pay for school anymore. And so I'd like got my stuff together and decided I was going to go to Harding. Good Church of Christ boy that I was. I'm going to go to Harding. They have
chapel too?
You have to go every single day, and they take attendance in a college.
I know. Yeah.
And if you miss more than 5 of them, you get suspended.
Yeah,
it was crazy.
Because that's important. Yeah.
But long story longer, when I went there, I thought I was going to play football, and I had a back injury. and couldn't do it. And so I was like, I kind of put that dream aside and decided that I was just going to do school. And I did a semester there, and through the social club that I was in, I met this guy who did Hapkido and he did judo.
Really?
And so I started asking him questions about that, and I was really interested in it and that kind of stuff. And then that semester I got super sick and missed like a month of classes. And I had to withdraw from school. I came back to Nashville. And the first thing I did when I came back to Nashville, I was like, I want to find a judo and jiu-jitsu school to go to. And I found the only one that was in Nashville at the time. And then it was kind of off and running from there. And then I transferred to UT. And then when I was at UT, I ran into more guys that did martial arts. And I realized I don't really want to go to school anymore. I just want to do martial arts full time. So that's kind of what I did. I just focused on doing martial arts full time. And then long story longer, I mean, through a strange string of events, I realized that I needed to be either in California, New York, or Chicago, like we kind of talked about before. Or maybe a couple places in Florida too that were like bigger spots that had better training. And I was like, well, I might as well go to California. I'd always wanted to see it and always wanted to be out there. So I moved to Arizona first because that's as close as I could get. And then I ended up in California after that. And I've been in California 15 years.
That's awesome, man. Dude, that's cool. And I didn't know that part of the story, but you know, like, and that's following passion, you know, like you found something that you love to do. How important is it to you to do something you love?
Well, number one, I mean, and you know, what's funny, I have a lot of friends who are like, dude, you're the one guy, you flew by the seat of your pants all the time. You know, I was pretty financially unstable for a long time, and but I was still traveling and training and going to all these places and all this other kind of stuff. And my friends are working 9-to-5 jobs and making good money. And they're like, man, I wish I could go to Thailand. You know, I wish I could be in Costa Rica. I wish I could do all these other things and travel to all these places and stuff.
Yeah.
So, but you know, I mean, again, the Joseph Campbell thing, the following your bliss, there really is something to that.
Sure.
Because, and I think that lends into the best day ever. I mean, I get to do what I love to do. It makes me happy.
Yeah.
I mean, I really am.
Yeah.
And the other thing that I've realized too is that the happiness doesn't really come from the external stuff. It doesn't come from the external stuff. It ends up coming from what's inside you, your mindset, the way you treat people, all those other kind of things. And you can kind of steer the ship where you want it to go. But man, I just think so many people are just on autopilot. They're like just cruising down the river of life. And they're like
waiting for the perfect time, right? That perfect time. Oh, when I have this amount of money, I'm going to do this. Or when I get this promotion, putting off what can be. So I mean, you had to take that leap. And I mean, in my experience, some of my most successful times in sales, like I was miserable. I was absolutely miserable. Made tons of money, but I was fucking miserable, man. And you know, it's important to you have to be fulfilled in what you do.
Yeah, and I think that's the thing. I mean, most people measure success by the amount of dollars that you have in your bank account. And honestly, I never looked at it like that. It was more about the experiences that I was having and that kind of stuff. And even though like there was a lot of times where I was flat broke, but I was like, man, I just had to have I just got back from this amazing trip. I got to train with these world-class people. Like I got to, you know, meet a new group of people and friends and get to see all these experiences. And I always kind of put more weight into that than I did the amount of money that I had in the account. And now, you know, I've come full circle where I've got I have my own company and all that other kind of stuff, and I make my own schedule, and and money's not really as big an issue as it used to be, and that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
So I think by following your bliss, I think if you really do follow that and you follow what you're passionate about. I told another friend of mine this the other day because he'd always made a lot of money, and he's in a job where he makes less money now. But he's like, man, this is the happiest that I've ever been, and it's very strange for me. I'm like, yeah, you can't put a price tag on that.
Yeah.
So, and I told him too, I was like, man, hang out, do what you're doing right now, and you keep working on yourself, and guess what? The money will end up following you back later on anyway. He's like, you're probably right. I'm like, yeah, totally will, man. So there you have it.
No, and I believe, you know, like I believe it, and I struggle with it. I'm human as anyone, but like I believe that we get to choose our attitude regardless, just like we choose our clothes every morning. You know, that is our choice. And I don't know if you've ever read Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning.
Yeah, Man's Search for Meaning. Yeah.
Yeah, like he was in the concentration camps, but it's true. Like the last of the human freedoms is to choose how we respond no matter what happens in our life. And I think that we get so caught up and lost in that shit, you know? Obviously it's something that you're doing a hell of a job with, but I mean, every day can't be perfect for you. So how do you deal with that?
Man,
And it sounds like you're pretty good, but you got to have, you have to be tested at times.
Yeah, I'm going to say about 80% of the time, life is pretty good. There's about 20, and hey, and for most people, that would be amazing odds anyway.
Absolutely.
80% of the time.
Yeah.
Man, usually I don't let myself get down for too long. If I do get down, I literally try to give myself a certain amount of time to be upset about stuff, and then I'm like, you got to click on, you got to move through this pretty quickly.
So how to explain that more? Is giving yourself time. That's a good idea.
This is a good example. I had a brand new school that I'd added onto my program, and I thought it was going to be I thought it was going to be a runaway hit. I thought it was going to be a big thing. And then I show up and they didn't have what I thought they were going to have. It didn't turn out exactly like I wanted. And I was disappointed
Expectations.
about it. And also in my head, I was already doing math. I was like, well, that'll be a great chunk of money that I'll have put away for this and this and this, and that'll take care of that. And, I went through that. When I realized that it wasn't going to turn out like that, I was like, man, that is such a huge bummer. And I drove around. I went to lunch that day, and I was like, man, I can't believe that didn't come through. And then after about a half an hour, I finally was like, man, you can't keep worrying about the fact that didn't work out. Something better will come along. Yeah. And again, like I was saying with the meditation thing of the fastballs are coming at you so fast you can't take a swing at them. Man, that's how it was. It was the thoughts were like, well, that sucks. You don't have that money now. That's not going to work out. This is not going to be this.
What if something else like this happened? Yeah.
And then it rolls into, now you can't pay for your car. Now you don't have a place to live. You can see where it goes easily.
Yeah.
And so I finally, at the end of it, I realized that's the other thing about, being calm enough to realize, hey, I'm in that vein of thought. I mean, that stuff, my mind is shooting a bunch of things at me at the same time. And I'm just like, okay, right now here, and the way I click out of it is right here in this moment right now. Is everything okay?
Yeah.
Am I in that catastrophe that I've made up in my mind right now? No, I'm not. Am I going to be in that catastrophe in my mind? Probably not.
If it's not happening right now, it's really not real. It's really not. But the more that we dwell on what might happen, I'm learning and seeing, even from my past, we're inviting it, like I think it was Eckhart Tolle, and one of the things that said, like, choose everything everything that's happening in your life, act as if you chose it, the good and the bad, act like you chose it, and finding peace. I think that is the biggest struggle and the biggest lesson that I'm learning and have learned and continue to practice, is just to be okay no matter what's going on. It's a tough, it takes practice. It takes attitude. You got to choose your attitude, man.
Well, and I think that's one of the other things that I realized a long time ago was that, man, you can have a crummy attitude about it, or you can have a good attitude about it. And I can go ahead and tell you, it's a lot easier to deal with the other speed bumps that you might run into with the better attitude than it is with the crummy one. Because if you're in the crummy one, it just feels like the snowball has rolled over you and picked you up, and now you're rolling down the mountain with the snowball, and you're in a real, shitstorm.
Sure.
So it's just a better way. And like you were saying too, I think you kind of mentioned this a little bit before. It takes consistency with this. It's just like working out at the gym or anything else. You got to consistently try to make sure that you really are programming your mind to be in a set of thoughts most of the time. It doesn't have to be all the time. It's virtually impossible to be like that all the time, but you got to really train your mind. And there's so many different, so many different spiritual practices and all that other kind of stuff that talk about training the mind. Buddhism being one of the big ones, which is one of the biggest influences that I've had.
Absolutely.
Is, controlling the mind, training the mind, and doing it. But you have to do it on a consistent basis, man. You can't just work out once and expect to be trim and fit.
Sure.
And the same thing with your mind.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And tell me more about, like, your meditative practice, and what do you schedule time for it, or I
do it in the morning. I usually do it in the morning, and what I do is there's a Headspace app that's great.
I have it.
So I use that some if I feel like I'm in a slump and if I don't feel like I'm getting out of it, which is a misconception too, because anytime you sit down and do it, you're getting something out of it, because they've shown now that it really does affect the brain waves when you start to do it. But what I do is on YouTube, there is several binaural beats and that kind of stuff that you can listen to. And one of them is like 648 megahertz, and one of them's
That's around the
520.
key number. Yeah.
Yeah,
I've got an
I
app
think
on that.
it's either 628 or 647.
It's close to 7. It's close to 7, I think, is like the main, what I've heard. Yeah. Keep going.
But what I do is I sit down and I have noise canceling headphones. I literally will sit down in my chair in the morning, and I've timed it out now. I count from 50 back to 0, and I just count the breaths, and I'll realize when I'm counting the breaths, I just breathe it in, breathe it out, and then I'll start thinking about something, and then I'll go, thinking. And I realize I'll say it 3 times, thinking. Then I'm like, okay, think about your breath again. Then you go back into that. And usually 50 breaths, if I do it at a fairly slow pace, will end up being about 5 to 10 minutes, depending on how long the breaths are.
That's awesome.
So I just kind of do that in the mornings. And then at night, a lot of people fall asleep doing this too. But at night, when I'm laying on my back in bed, I'll literally make sure I lay on my back and I fold my arms across my chest. And I try to do 100. I count from 100 backwards. And a lot of times that's when I'll add a mantra into it, or I'll add an image into it that I think about, of something that I want to manifest. And I do that right before I fall asleep.
And that's the best time because that's when the subconscious, the thing that's keeping our hearts beating, keeping us breathing while we're asleep, it's doing the work. And if we go to sleep like, oh shit, what about tomorrow? Or God, I dread this, whatever, you're asking for it. We're asking for it. And I think that's very important. That's good that you have it like down to two times a day.
Yeah. I mean, and listen, I tell the people this too. It does not have to be a long time.
Yeah.
If I'm in a hurry in the morning, sometimes I'll sit down and do 25 breaths, and that literally takes like 3 or 4 minutes at the most.
Yeah.
Do that 3 or 4 minutes, and then if I'm really tired at night, then I'll do like 20. I'll count down from 50 to 0, and usually by that time I fall asleep. But I fell asleep with that image in my head or something like that. I had this great minister. I still go to a Center for Spiritual Living out here some, and this minister that we have there he was amazing. Had studied Buddhism and Hinduism and a lot of Native American religions and Christianity and Judaism. So he's really knowledgeable about most of the great spiritual practices. And he goes, you need to make sure you're doing affirmations every day. You need to make sure you're doing meditation every day and fill in your head, reading good material and that kind of stuff. And he's like, that's your spiritual practice. And he goes, when you really have a spiritual practice, if you'll still do it when you're tired and when you're sick. Yeah. So if you're sick and tired, either one of those two, and you still end up doing some of that stuff, then you really have a real practice going.
Yeah.
So that's one of the things I always think about whenever I feel really crummy. I'm like, all right, just sit down and do it anyway. Go ahead and just do 5 minutes. You can make it through 5 minutes, and then you can go crawl into bed.
Punch through. Yeah.
Yeah. So, but yeah, that's pretty much what I do. And then I do a prayer. I try to do a gratitude prayer every morning too.
It's huge. Yeah. And I think that's, what I'm learning and being taught by all these people that show up in my life. It's that, if we can it's thought plus elevated emotion. And, even this is the best day ever. Like, you say that enough, it helps, man. It brings that energy. I know you know that. You're living proof of it.
Well, my buddy in Nashville, we talk every single day, and I'll do the first. If he calls me first, I'll pick up the phone. Best motherfucking day ever, my friend. That's what it always is. Or I'll get him first. I'm like, "What's up, best motherfucking day ever, my friend?" And it usually goes back and forth like that. But he and I talk about this a lot. Like, you can throw a pebble in the pond; it makes the ripples that touch other people and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, dude, I want to pick up a giant cannonball and throw it in the pond today. Yeah. So I'm like, just throw a cannonball in the pond and see if you can make some waves for some other people in a positive way.
Yeah.
So.
No, and I know that, like, I struggled with meditation early on, and I had a good analogy, which makes sense. If I don't watch the news, I quit. I tuned all that out years ago personally.
Me too.
But if you're ever watching a news channel and there's the ticker symbol, or it's not just that now, it's like we're able to I think you said it perfectly. Like, we have to become the observer, like when thoughts pop up, just be okay with it. Just like, it's like watching it, you can watch a TV show with something going across the bottom without, you're still able to focus on what you're watching. So, and just be the observer and not the actor in the drama. And I think that, that's a big struggle for people.
Because I think a lot of people have the misconception that they're supposed to sit down and that their brain is that they're going to hit a point in a space where they have no thoughts.
some magical space that they
your
can't
mind's going to completely clear out. Dude, it is never going to be like that. It's never going to be like that, you know. But it might be where I can catch myself and I can do 5 or 6 breaths, and I'm like, hey, I didn't really think about too much stuff while that was going on. And for me, that feels like a small victory, you know.
Yeah.
And that, when I say that, when I do in the thinking, for some reason, saying it repetitions of 3, thinking,
3, 6, 9.
When I roll into a story in my head while I'm trying to be, while I'm trying to be mindful, I do that thinking. And for some reason it pops me out. I'm like, oh, I am thinking. I need to, concentrate on your breath again. Just do that. If you just do that for another couple minutes, that'd be great.
Yeah.
So.
Awesome. Yeah, man. So tell me about manifestation. I mean, just the fact that you've been on 4 game shows, and we'll wrap this up soon, but with Wheel of Fortune and Fear Factor, how much is your, if you had gone in those they probably won't accept, I probably won't make it. Like, how did you go into those?
Well, I mean, if you've met me, my personality is pretty out there anyway.
Sure.
And I'm pretty high strung, like I said earlier. So that part, I never really had trouble being in front of people and doing that kind of stuff. But I can tell you a real concrete manifestation story.
Yeah, do that.
I was running a karate studio for a guy out in LA, and I kind of stumbled into that job, and I knew I loved doing martial arts, and I was bartending at the same time too. But once I stumbled into that, I was like, hey, I could really teach and could kind of make a run at this. So I was running this guy's karate school. And man, he was working me like a dog, and we were not getting treated that well. Now, I will say I did also learn a lot about how to teach from that guy, but overall, it ended up being not a great scenario for me. And it was starting to get to the point where I was miserable with it and that kind of stuff. And I was like, man, I really need to go out and start my own karate studio. And I thought to myself, I was like, well, man, you're going to need at least 15 to 20K just to get it off the ground and kind of get it running and finagle it. And I was like, but I need that all at one time. And at the time I was making, I think $500 a week is what this guy was paying, and living in LA. Which was great. So I was making $2,000 a month, and my cost of living was like $1,400 a month. I had like no money left.
Ramen noodles and
yes, it was horrible. Yeah. And working like a dog too. Yeah. And I started listening to this Wayne Dyer.
He's right there on my wall, man. He's one of my
He had a CD,
which is fulfilled. Was that it?
Yeah, it was, Wish is Fulfilled, but he also had a CD that was meditations for manifesting, and you did ohms and ahs, and you were supposed to go through, and like he had a whole process where you could do it along with him. But after I'd kind of learned the process that he did, I started inserting in there the things that I needed, that I wanted to have happen. So I kept thinking, I was like, well, how am I going to make like $15,000 at one time? I was like, oh, I know what I do. I need to get a national commercial. If I can get a national commercial, I bet I'll make $15,000. So I for a year, over a year, I did this manifesting meditation, and I put in, I'm in a national commercial. I'm in a national commercial. Nothing happened, but I kept doing it anyway. And so I was at this karate studio that I worked at. There was a lot of people who worked in the film business that worked there. Or that had their kids came in there. So I knew them on a really innocent level, knowing their kids, all this other kind of stuff. So I get a call out of nowhere one day, and this lady calls me. She's like, hey, and she was a big casting director in LA, but I'd worked with her 3 kids forever. And she's like, hey, they're casting a Priceline commercial, and they need karate people. You should go and audition for this.
Get out of here, dude.
And dude, I was in between classes, and I was running and gunning that day, and I was like, I don't even have time for this, and did not feel like going and doing it at all. But I showed up. I did not even have a headshot. I showed up, went and did this audition. Boom, I get a call back. I show up to the callback, and I'm like, well, sweet, man. If I got a callback, I'm probably going to get this job. So I go in for the second callback. I get there. There's like 100 people in line on the callback.
Yeah.
And I got there late because I couldn't find the place where I was supposed to go. They've done this fight choreography. They talked to everybody, and they were like, I didn't have time to learn any of that stuff. And so I literally stood in line, and this guy 5 minutes before I walked in, he goes, well, let me show you kind of what they showed me out there. This is what we're going to do for the fight choreography. I'm like, okay. I go in, I do that. I walk out of there. I'm like, man, there's no way. I did not get that job. And I was like, dang, man, that was going to be like $15,000.
Yeah.
Did I get a call back 2 days later? I ended up booking this Priceline commercial with William.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Really, dude, that's awesome.
It's still on YouTube. If you look up Priceline Taekwondo, you'll see.
All right,
I'm in
I will, dude.
Yeah,
Dude, that is awesome, man.
But long story longer.
Yeah.
I did that job, and it came out, and the commercial started running, and they put it in heavy rotation because those Priceline commercials were really popular at the time. Yeah. And then it did 2 runs, went out of rotation. Well, then it got called up and got voted in as comedy commercial of the year. It was in the running for comedy commercial of the year. So they brought it back in rotation again. I made $16,000 on that one job. We worked 1 8-hour day, and I got the money, and I was able to leave that other job and start my own thing, which started me on the path to what I'm doing now.
Dude, that's awesome, man.
And I'm like, that is literally, people talk about manifesting and miracles and that kind of stuff. I'm like, that is something I literally had put out there. I'm going to get a national commercial. I'm going to get a national commercial. And boom, it like fell in my lap when I least expected it. And didn't even want to go. I was like, I don't even want to go. I don't even have a headshot. This is stupid. So.
Dude, that's awesome, man.
It's a true story too, man. But it really does show the power of
intention and.
Yeah. And there's a great documentary called The Kid Stays in the Picture. I don't know if you've ever seen that.
I have not.
Oh man, it's one of my favorite documentaries ever. It's on a guy named Robert Evans. He was this giant producer at Paramount. He did The Godfather, Rosemary's Baby, and all this other kind of stuff. Yeah. But it showed how he came up, and he was like a terrible like B actor, and he quit acting completely and happened to be in L.A. And this lady saw him at a pool and was like, "I want you to play my husband in this movie with Jimmy Cagney." And it like restarted his career, and he ended up becoming a producer instead. But he has this line in there, and I tell everybody this all the time. He's like, some people call it luck that I got discovered jumping into that pool in Beverly Hills. He goes, you know what I call luck? Where opportunity meets preparation. Yeah. And so I was like, man, that I had put all the mental work into that. And like 2 years before that commercial came up, I went, because I was bartending. A buddy of mine was taking these commercial acting classes. He's like, man, you should come. They're really fun. I went and did these commercial acting classes just for shits and giggles.
Yeah.
And 2 years later, it came rolling around, and
dude, that's awesome.
I knew what I was supposed to do, and I did it and walked in and ended up getting this job that made me $16,000, allowed me to move on to a completely different thing in my life. So,
dude, I love it. What an awesome story, man. And thank you, man. I love how, I hope you can come back on more whenever you've got time.
Oh, dude, I would love to.
I'd love to get into like our background and, our religious upbringing and how we've had to grow into what, really spirituality, which is different from religion to me,
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But no, dude, thanks for your energy. Thanks for your time. And dude, have the best fucking day ever.
You have the best fucking day ever.
Awesome, dude.
All right, amigo. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, man. Thanks, brother. Right. Take care.